science of turning fiction into fact.
Sometimes kind of real architectural life interferes with intellectual architectural life.
There is no such thing as architecture.
Hello everyone, this is Vikram Prakash and you are listening to Architecture Talk. First of all, a very happy Diwali to everyone. It's the big Indian Hindu holiday, which is this Saturday. We will be having a nice big ceremony. And if you are or aren't, in any case, happy Diwali. Today I'm speaking to my other South Asian compatriot friend Amir Sheikh. As you will see from our conversation, Amir is a man of many disciplines, many intelligences, and many ways of looking at the world. And I try and get into those in the process of discussing this incredible map that he put together as a part of the Waterlines project sponsored by the Burke Museum here in Seattle at the University of Washington, which tells a rich, complex history of this land that we call the Greater Seattle Area or the Pacific Northwest by general. I hope you enjoyed this conversation because it meant a lot to me, and I hope that I can do many things out of this conversation in the future. Here we go. Amir Sheikh, welcome to Architecture Talk.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Vikram.
So, we have known each other a long time. I have seen you walk the halls of University of Washington. I have seen you walk through schools of architecture, schools of urban design and planning, schools of forestry, schools of anthropology, the corridors of cultural studies, geology, native studies, historiography. You're a man of so many interests. And what I found most amazing about you is that you refuse to be slotted down into a disciplinary identity. And I can tell you that that's a rare trait. Even in this podcast where I interview all kinds of people, rarely will I run into somebody who is so coherently, consistently cross-disciplinary, somebody who refuses disciplinary boundary. So thank you for doing that.
I'm very undisciplined.
Oh, I like that. That's even better.
Yes.
Oh, I like that. I've been struggling for a while with, cross-disciplinary, transdisciplinary, predisciplinary. But maybe it should all just be undisciplined.
Yes. Undisciplined, blurred boundaries or unboundaries. I don't know.
So with this undisciplined kind of outlook, what I was intrigued by and what I'm still working on and what my good friend and colleague Nicole and I are sort of organizing, in a sense, the studio around is what we are doing is a kind of trying to start a genealogy of the Pacific Northwest, which is that we are trying to think about the many ways in which the history, or rather the many ways in which what we call the present is informed complexly, should be informed complexly by what happened before and not in a selective way. And in that work, what is a reference point for us is this incredible map that you prepared, that you were part of a team that prepared for the Burke Museum, which is the Waterlines map. And I thought what we could do today, if that's okay with you, is that we could simply have a look at this map and we could talk about it and walk through it. Yeah.
I mean, let me preface that this map is one piece of a larger project, a larger umbrella project called the Waterlines Project, which is trying to give public different views into landscape and urban history. And this map, because it's one of the only actual physical map that's circulating. So this is what's more well known of the project. But we've tried to translate this type of information, and it's sort of transmedia in multimodal ways.
Okay.
Whether it's consulting with signage going in to the city, site-specific installations that reveal the hidden histories of a specific area, or different types of visualizations. And this is just one part of the project, but very good entry point.
So what this map is, it's called Seattle, the Waterlines project. And how I would describe this map is, our listeners can't see anything, so that's one thing to remember. But the way I would describe this map is that it contains it's like a Google Earth image, but a Google Earth image that has what the land was before it was transformed, starting with white settler occupation in around 1850. So it's like as if there was a Google Earth image before that. And not only is it a 1850 Google Earth image of not Puget Sound, but sort of King County, larger Seattle, greater Seattle area.
Yeah, Seattle area.
But it also contains annotations on it, which take two forms. One is that they show very thinly in a very dull line, a new kind of outlines of the land is. And more interestingly, and almost more importantly, they contain at least markings of all the native names in southern Lushootseed, the names or the sort of monikers by which the native people identified various sites and various geographical features.
So if I can echo you, it is a map of Seattle. It's a decolonized map of Seattle around the time of early settler colonialism by Euro-American settlement. It's a snapshot around 1850s or so. And it is playing with ubiquitous imagery that we have in our minds that we refer to when we think about maps these days. We're using the sort of satellite imagery appearance of what it would look like. And as you had mentioned, the only contemporary feature we have on it is a faint white line outlining the modern shoreline. So the shorelines, there have been drastic landscape changes. The rivers have been rerouted. Lake Washington has been lowered, and so what we consider the shoreline today was different in these places 150 years ago.
Right.
And then populated on the map is place names in southern Lushootseed. They're essentially stories. They're proofs of presence, archives of meaning, reference to treaties. And there's a whole genealogy and lineage around these place names as well.
Fantastic. Thanks for that much better articulated introduction to the map. So one of the things I want you to, I don't know if you have the map in front of you. Mm-hmm. I wonder if you would read for me this text, which says what a place name is. It starts with place names are stories. Would you read that text for me?
Sure. I think I started saying some parts of that before.
Yeah. So, but just read it as it is.
Sure. Place names are stories, proofs of presence, archives of meaning, evidence of ancestry, and reference for treaties and other legal connections to territory. These place names are written in Southern Lushootseed language of the Coast Salish people, drawn from elders who worked with ethnographers in the early 20th century, from the work of linguists and scholars such as the late Vi Hilbert, and the work of Southern Lushootseed scholars Nancy Jobob and Tammy Hone.
Fantastic. So you have introduced in this idea of place names are stories. Mm-hmm. Place names are stories. So places as stories. I would, this suggests to me the idea of places as stories. What do you mean by that?
Well, I would say, all places have stories to tell.
But specifically in the
yeah.
native context, yeah.
These place names, they provide, essentially describe relationships to the land, plants, and animals, and to each other, and how people interpreted and used the land, along with the sacred as well. It's all encompassed. There are different types of genealogies and relationships to the landscape. They're all interconnected and have relationships with each other.
So, place names as stories, proofs of presence, archives of meanings, evidence of ancestry, reference to treaties and other legal connections to territory. That's just, you have layered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things already into the idea of naming, which is so fantastic. Because when I walk around over here in my neighborhood here in Capitol Hill, I don't think that actually Capitol Hill is just one iteration, one layer, one moment, one moniker in a deeply and complexly layered genealogy to this land that I'm walking on. Yeah, it is a kind of an inscription of land in a complex, deep way.
Yeah, there's many sedimented histories that interact and express themselves in profound ways that I think most people don't understand or realize in their everyday lives, when in the places they crisscross in their neighbor, like you're talking about, you walk around the block, and I think that's one of the points of this project, is trying to, one of the frameworks that is behind this, that is coming from essentially the fields of geography and anthropology, is counter mapping. And it's amplifying these spatial narratives that challenge and complicate the dominant socio-spatial power structures and representations of a place.
It's more, and it's counter mapping, but it's much more than counter mapping. It's a reimagining.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
It's a first step of reimagining and bringing in, and that's another thing, is trying to bring in intersecting various different narratives, many of place, and where they come together. It's also another tool of bringing different people into this map. There's many different entryways, entry points. People are drawn through their own experiences and their own interests, and the more intersections of interests or stories, whether it's ecological, whether it's historical, whether it's indigenous, whether it's urban planning, or these things, if you explicitly intersect them in imaginative ways, I think you bring many other people to this kind of work.
Right. I think not only does it sort of therefore provide entryways or entry points or gateways for many different people to enter into the land, but what is amazing for me is, as I look at this map, as I walk along and I think about where I am, and I'm entering it through my basic participation in white settler epistemologies, which is to say, let's say I walk around Capitol Hill. But once I have your map in my hand, I can sense all kinds of other people walking with me.
Yeah.
Who have entered the place in different ways.
That's right.
And they're all there with me. And I am host to them, and they are my hosts. We are all there together in spirit, even though, we are not sort of in the same epistemic space. That's such a profound reading of place. And it's sort of, I wonder, I don't know if you, in the course of your work, whether you distinguish this or linked this to ideas of place and phenomenology, such as in the work of, Norbert Schultz or other, how do you relate this kind of thinking to that kind of thinking?
I would say for me personally, again, there's many collaborators in this project, but for me personally, I was saying before, intersecting different types of narratives, entry points, but also how to present different ways of knowing and seeing as well, and experiencing a place. How do you intersect those? And I think phenomenology, for instance, I think I had mentioned, there's this installation that I collaborated on with Zach Coram and Francis Nelson that was trying to bring forth an old bend of the Duwamish River that has now been channelized. And it's in an area of Georgetown. It's about a half a kilometer. The old bend of the river and the site that we tried to reveal is about half a kilometer away from the new channel where the channel exists. And many people don't even realize that the river went through that specific spot, let alone that some people don't even realize that there's actual river half a kilometer away.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the river has been so marginalized, and so industrialized, as in so many other parts of the world. That's right. It's so sad.
Yeah, and so one of the things we're trying to do with this installation is trying to bring together. I would say Francis also is very much into phenomenology, is integrate phenomenological.
Interphenomenology?
No, not into. Yeah.
Oh,
sorry.
No, I thought that was a great concept. Interphenomenology.
We can make it interphenomenology. We can.
I like that better. Interphenomenology.
How about undisciplined interphenomenology?
Undisciplined interphenomenology. Amir Sheikh, you the man. I love it.
How would you bring forth an expression of the river as it's first of all its own river having its own agency as this material water flowing and having its own power and assertion, and with other way we brought together and how to represent it with more data driven approaches of how to represent the river. And so, I mean, that's getting at one point of, I think you've seen it, whether we hang these we had hung these cloth banners that had the depths of the river at that spot. And the cloth banners would have its own, within it would move around in the wind, like it was a current, it was a different type of current moving above land, representing the river as it exists in that spot, but above land.
So in case our listeners didn't catch this, what you just described is a project which is artwork, which is performance art, which is site-specific installation, which attempts to reveal cultural geography, which uses GIS, which actually connects to native histories, which is speaking to a white audience, and which is also spatial and architectural. I mean, holy shit, man. How do you do all this? I mean, how can you put all these things together in 2-3 sentences?
Well, first of all, I'm explicitly integrating, but I'm also working with other people who are bringing their own strengths and skills and viewpoints. And it's finding that meeting point, intersection, that you create something anew. And that just, it's organic synergy in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, well, it takes a lot of people. There's no question about it. But I mean, you bring people together from GIS, from anthropology, from cultural geography, from GIS technical data, from installation art, from performance art. You intersect across all these things in a completely undisciplined manner. It's so impressive. As you did this project and you engaged so deeply in it, what has stayed with you in your body as the sort of deep experiential learning from having done this project?
In a sense, it's kind of what you were getting at when I walked through this space. I carry with me these different ghost landscapes in the sense that are not even, I mean, I'd hate to even use that word ghost landscape because I think they're expressing themselves and very much alive.
Living
and-
ghosts.
Yeah, maybe the living ghost is a better terminology, or I'm not sure.
So undisciplined living ghost interphenomenological events.
What's the acronym of that? I don't know.
Acronyms suck, man.
Yeah.
Go on. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No. You and I think it's about how it's like different ways of reading the landscape and being hyper aware of what you traverse in your everyday life. And you just I carry that in a place like Seattle. I when I look out, I literally see different viewpoints intersecting each other, in my view shed.
They become alive, right? I mean, they become very present and real instead of the history and genealogy as being something from the past, that you have to abstract and modernize and all that nonsense. All these things become simultaneous and immediate and happily accessible for you. One of the things I think that is manifest in this effort on the map is that you have all these names, both in Southern Lushootseed and in English.
Yeah.
And that simultaneity comes across. So talk to us a little bit about that. Why do you have these two things, and what was the thinking around that? Why did you use two languages?
Well, Southern Lushootseed is indigenous language. I was spoken in what is now called Seattle. So it just, it's a renaming, reclaiming, decolonizing. I guess to get back to the provenance of the knowledge and genealogy of these names is that they, again, this is a snapshot. This is a snapshot of knowledge. Like any place, any culture is very dynamic, and this is also a fraction of what's been retained from what was probably exist. The landscape probably most likely had thousands of named places instead of, and we probably have 10, 20% of that retained, and who knows what is lost in contemporary translations. So it's a continual process of language revitalization that's happening right now. These were originally collected by T.T. Waterman, who is an ethnographer, anthropologist, student of Boas, who is considered one of the founding people of American anthropology, and he had collected them, and they're very inaccessible, unorganized notes. Horrible maps, and he frankly got a lot of things wrong. In the 90s, Vi Hilbert, who's Upper Skagit elder and language scholar, who one of the leaders led the movement for language revitalization in this area, worked alongside with other scholars and linguists and other elders, and went through T.T. Waterman's work and updated it, corrected it, and tied it explicitly into language revitalization efforts. And what she spoke was largely Northern Lushootseed. There's two primary dialects, Northern and Southern.
Right.
And so in this current edition of the map, we worked with Tammy Hone and Nancy Jo Bob, who are leaders in Southern Lushootseed revitalization efforts. And that's how we see in the map today.
Fantastic. And I'm wondering, like these names that you have on the map, like these A to K village sites.
Yeah.
So would you read for me simply the village sites in English, just one after the other, just so that we get a sense of what they are?
Place where something is grown or sprouts. Slough for testing thickness of a canoe hull. Threading or inserting something. Brush spread on water. Prairies. A place to turn around or to cross over. herring house, water at the head of the bay, place where one wades, and confluence of waters. So as you can see, a lot of these are descriptive of literally a lot of it is descriptive of what was there or how it was used, how the area was used, and what was there, and describing the actual landscape.
Right. Is that how it was always with all the sites, that they were sort of all descriptive and they didn't have kind of names in the sort of Christian sense?
Yeah, no, they're very much, descriptive. They're essentially descriptors of place, practices. Yeah.
I mean, and that reminds me, makes me think of, my and your other cultural heritage. We both share the cultural heritage of being part of the Pacific Northwest, but we also share the cultural heritage of being from South Asia. And there too, in many ways, names are kind of like descriptions of your being, in a sense, in the world, rather than some kind of thing you own as your intrinsic identity. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. And also, there's also names on here that are, what is it called? Onomatopoeia, or how?
Onomatopoeic, yeah.
Yeah, where there's sort of how it sounds.
Ah, fantastic.
Yeah.
When I was named, there was a naming ceremony on the 40th day after my birth. And I think my mom had a name or something, but that somehow didn't work for astrological reasons. And there was a gathering of people, and the call was made in public for a name for me. And it had to start with the sound V or the letter V. And then somebody just said, "Oh, Vikramaditya," and everybody said, "Yeah, that looks good." And that name was given to me. So in the sense, that's the name that was socially discursively produced for me as my socially discursive identity, rather than the name as something that is given to me by my parents as somehow intrinsic to my being. And I think that kind of a sense of being in the world, rather than being myself.
That's right, yeah.
It belongs to this kind of thinking, does it not?
That I completely agree. In a sense, it gives a place its own meaning, but also is more apt to be actually storyful.
Yes,
too.
Storyful. Wonderful phrasing. Yeah, storyful. Yeah. Yes. You're a man who concocts these new words. Huh? Is that your specialty? Undisciplined. That's what happens when you're undisciplined.
Well, I consider that's the problem. I live in the cracks, and my worldview is from the cracks, from the disciplined perspective.
The cracks, undisciplined cracks. Yes.
I'm more of a connective tissue person. Instead of a rhizomic.
You're a rhizomic collective tissue.
Connected.
Yes, so you're even taking us to Deleuze. You're a theorist.
Yes,
also.
Exactly. I'm Deleuze.
What else do you do?
True.
I mean,
That's
so you've
true.
got Deleuze, you've got GIS, you've got cultural theory, you've got geography, you've got installation art, you've got, oh my God. So in that spirit, why don't we do you another one over here? Do you want to read us the water-related places?
Sure, I'll just bring out a few. Place of dripping water, place of red paint, which is Licton Springs, which is one of the few original names I still retain to this day in Seattle. Having lots of water, place to spirit journey, place of frogs, to lift a canoe, water for land otter, trail descends into the water, yellowish greenish rushes on the point of land.
Elderberry house, face crooked, place of rock, bitter lake, a place to go calm down. Saltwater, places where people are sent. Place for red paint, place for dripping water. Channel watercourse, green lake, large, having lots of water. place to spirit journey, place of frogs. Outlet, place where one whips the water. To lift a canoe, fathoms, hang or throw over, small lake. Water for land otter, a trail descends into the water where it emerges by bubbling, yellowish, greenish, rushes on the point of land, trout. Place of a supernatural monster, horned snake, a marsh with channels where canoes can be pushed through, place of spearing. Draining creek over flatlands, frame for drying fish, capsized little bends at the end, untie the house, lake, ducklings, something which emits a squawk or peep, marshes. What a list. It reads like poetry to me. I feel like it's like one of those Ginsberg poems, you know? Have you heard him recite Howl?
I actually have seen him live when he was in Ann Arbor, Michigan, in the 90s, I believe. Do a reading of Howl.
Oh my God! Really?
I did. Yes, I did. It was. I believe I was in high school.
Incredible. Doesn't it sound like Ginsberg? You're going to claim that you're not an architect and an urban designer and planner, so that's okay. But when you look at this map and when you look at this sort of this kind of genealogy and history of the Pacific Northwest, it just sends me into a dream state. You know, like I'm dreaming. Like there's a sort of a creative dream unfolding in my head. And I talked about ghosts walking with me as I read these things, but ghosts, living ghosts, because these are living ghosts. And I think it's very important to note that, of course, the native peoples aren't dead. You know, they're there and they're alive and they're still here. And that's an important thing. Yeah. But that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about here is that this mapping and this coding and this presencing of this history, you know, I can read a different history book. You know, so-and-so came here and so-and-so came here and then this happened and then the trees were cut and then we built Madison Avenue and then there was which is a different kind of a history, which somehow always remains other and separate to the present. But there is something about this map which seems to make it alive and living today. And I wonder what that arouses in you about how to think about the future. You know, if we want to sort of reimagine another Pacific Northwest or Seattle or southern Lachute Sea land, what kind of things crop up for you?
And I don't have any like specific prescriptions, but I do think that these place-based storytelling, and I like to differentiate, you know, like a lot of decision making these days are made by big data, when, you know, data driven, but I would call it, this is slow data, you know.
Slow data, another one.
And I don't know if I'm original in saying that, but, you know, I'm sure other people are calling something slow data, you know, but
that sounds very original to me. I've never heard slow data.
But from my perspective, in terms of storytelling and place-based storytelling, and it's not only for broadly informing and shaping our relationships between each other, our land, the water, the plants and animals, our history, but the stories we tell each other in slow data particularly, you know, it's a means of community empower. It can be a form of community empowerment and mobilization, and that can influence decision making in certain ways. You know, and I think this is like a piece of many different types of stories. And I like to borrow from Dolores Hayden her phrase "storytelling with the shapes of time."
Storytelling with the shapes of time. Yes, yeah. I like that, and the contours of shape of land. So it helps make community. Mm-hmm. But does it help imagine a different kind of community?
Yeah, I mean, I think first we need to know who we are and where we came from to imagine what is possible.
But one of the interesting things about this is you said we need to know who we are and where we came from.
Yeah.
But via this map, you and I, who would normally say we came from South Asia, is it possible for us to say, this map tells us where we came from? Because can we claim
No.
as we are coming from the Pacific Northwest?
No. I mean, but we
Why not?
we are intersecting this place, so we are making our imprint in whatever ways we choose to participate by even just living in breathing and walking by its waters, drinking its waters.
Yep. I mean, one way to define history is via our DNA.
Yeah.
But the other way to define history and ancestry may be via land.
Yeah.
I walk upon this land and therefore I owe this land and I belong to this land.
Or you're responsible for it in certain ways. And maybe it's also a reframing, a form of stewardship. How can we care for this land collectively? How can we come up with a collective vision of stewardship? What does that mean?
For sure.
Yeah. Instead of management. It's
Yeah.
more
Stewardship. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would feel that stewardship if I felt a sense of belonging to it.
Yes. And that's, I think this is maybe a tool to try. You have to feel somewhat of a connection to the land or the place.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is one type of tool that also can enhance that type of, in theory, and I don't know, and I'm sure can help in a way amplify or parse out or bring out these different types of connections that might be relevant to someone.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if I only think of myself as an immigrant from South Asia who arrived in Seattle, 20 years ago, then everything before 1996 is other to me. But that's not a good way to think. I like to believe that I can both be from South Asia and be from the Pacific Northwest. And not just in a, Johnny come lately fresh off the boat sense, in which, of course, I joined the many long immigrant histories to the United States, but also in another new land belonging sense. If another way of looking at native histories allows me to do that, I mean, it seems to me that modern ways of thinking, insist, and maybe even, ancestry obsessed Indian ways of thinking, will refuse to give up their stranglehold on you and say, well, you belong to a certain caste in India and that's what it is. And that's that, right? You cannot claim any other identity. But it may be that in the new narratives that are more place-based, place story-based, other people can enter into those narratives and have a sense of belonging, regardless of their DNA. I mean, I feel that that's potentially a powerful way to deconstruct this persistent problem of settlers, immigrants versus original people, and who came later and who came before and who's been how long and all that kind of stuff. So belonging to a place is not so much a matter of when you showed up. Belonging to a place is more a matter of how you ethically engage with its history.
That's right.
And want to have a sense of engaged belonging to its history as a sense of yourself, not as a sense of somebody else's history.
Yep, I agree with you. I think these relationships, they're actively they're being actively experienced, shaped, contested, and reshaped continuously.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah, and it's not a static thing. It's not a singular thing. It's not a frozen in time thing, or a loyalty or affiliation thing. You know, I'm this one thing. It's a verb. It's in transition. It's in constant reformation. It's alive. The past is present, and the future is already here. It's a powerful enablement, I think, that's offered by our map. And I think that project in general, and perhaps the native ways of being in the world. I don't want to in any way claim to know native, even our local Salish people's histories or identities. You know, I've not worked on that, but I'm just sort of imputing what it speaks to me, and it sort of offers a reading of place which has this multiplicity to it. Fantastic. So what is the future of this project? You know, where would you like, if you got a MacArthur Genius Award, which you totally deserve, where would you like to take this?
You know, this has, you know, been a side project. It's been coherently funded, or, you know, everything we've done has been sort of come up out of just simple, modest opportunities and different types of different collaborators. You know, if there was I would love to have a connection between different, getting back to multimodal ways of representation and transmedia ways of implementing this type of work, and having something that is digital, having things that are in place, site specific, and in print that are mobile, also both digitally and in your hands, and you can feel and touch. Have different ways of connecting those things together throughout the landscape of Seattle in different ways. You know, creating a mesh of different types of interpretation and storytelling about place.
What are you talking about? Like barcodes in the landscape?
It doesn't have to be barcodes. That, you know, no, I don't know about barcodes, but these are things yet to be, you know, you know, they could be, I mean, if you want to be tech, they could be augmented reality, if that makes sense, but it doesn't have to be. I don't necessarily fall into that, you know, I don't necessarily fall into a tech trap.
Okay, thank God you left one discipline alone. I appreciate that.
But I think it can work together with other. One of the things that, if you haven't noticed, is that I tend to do mashups of both analog and digital methodologies of most and everything I've created, whether, you know, it's GIS work and collaborating with artists. Like I collaborate with designers. I should do a shout out to Jordan Munez and Michael Lewis, who were landscape students through UW and had both done their theses on the Duwamish. And so it was much easier. They already had an idea of what we were trying to achieve, and it was very easy to work with them for making this map because of that. They already had a context. But you know, whether it's this animation, I think I've mentioned to you or shown to you, that shows that Pioneer Square changing over time. You know, that's hand-drawn illustrations with GIS and Google Earth put together. So it's like using digital methodologies, but perhaps more implementing them in the analog world. When people stumble upon these things in their real world, in their everyday lives, I think it has more of an impact, especially if it's disorienting in a certain sense, that jogs them, that literally makes them feel like captivates them in a certain way, but makes them reorient to their place in it. And so...
Yeah, I mean, I think that's such important work. I mean, this sort of, what did you call it, counter mapping of our land, of our inhabitations of it, and decolonization of, you know, normative ways of representing land, inhabitation, houses, cities, architecture is so incredibly important. And that's not something we understand many times in architecture, where we tend to treat the site as, tabula rasa, other than,
Palimpsest.
zoning requirements and perhaps some height limitations and formal references. We don't think of entering our work into a deep genealogy and a multimodal genealogy of the site, which is still alive. Fantastic. Thanks so much for coming on to this podcast and for sharing this work with us and for all the incredible things that you have been doing.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I appreciate your enthusiasm. And I look forward to collaborating with you if there's an opportunity.
Thank you for listening to Architecture Talk. This is your producer, Amelia Jarvinen. We hope you enjoyed the conversation, and if you did, please subscribe and rate us on iTunes or Spotify. We would also love to hear from you if you have any suggestions on new topics or guests. You can always reach out to us on our website, Facebook, or Instagram. Thanks again, and until next time, this is Architecture Talk.